Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, why did I say that? Maybe it was a moment of frustration. Or maybe, deep down, you just wanted to be heard, even if it came out wrong. The truth is, most of us don't struggle with knowing which way. We struggle with pausing long enough to say it the right way. And that's the battlefield. Today, in a world where everyone is racing to speak truth, our lies in the person who knows when to stay silent. Not out of fear, but out of self-minded mastery. Because words are never free. They come with a cost: relationships, trust, reputation. And often, that cost is hidden until it's too late. But here's the good news: you can change this. You can train your mind, sharpen your awareness, and start choosing your words with purpose, not pressure. That's what Stoic philosophy teaches us. Not to become cold, but to become clear. In this video, you're going to learn 7 powerful tools drawn from ancient wisdom and modern science to help you speak less, mean more, and protect your inner peace. By the end, you won't just communicate better. You'll think differently. You'll live differently. If this message resonates already, share it with someone who needs it. It might save them a relationship, a regret, or a second chance. Let's begin. There's a saying by Epictetus that goes, nature gave us one tongue and 2 ears, so we could hear twice as much as we speak. It sounds simple, but behind those words is a life-minus changing truth. Because the person who listens truly listens wins more than arguments. They win people. Think about your last conversation. Were you really listening, or just waiting for your turn to speak? Most people speak to respond, not to understand. And that's why they miss everything that matters: the hesitation in someone's voice, the truth between their words, the emotion behind their silence. Listening isn't about staying quiet. It's about being present. Dave, a ride-shared driver in New York City, understood this. One morning, a woman stepped into his car. Red eyes, drained expression. She didn't say much. Neither did Dave. Just good morning, no radio. A bottle of water in the cup holder. Silent glances in the mirror to check if she was okay. When the ride ended, she left a note behind. I just lost my father. Thank you for letting me sit in silence. This ride was the kindest thing I've experienced all week. Dave said nothing. And somehow he said exactly what needed to be said. This is the power of intentional silence. Not emptiness, but presence. Now imagine if we all practiced that. If, instead of interrupting or reacting, we paused and gave space. The Stoics called this soft, rosy new eyes moderation. A calm control of the self. And here's the key: great listeners aren't quieter because they lack something to say. They're quieter because they've already said it to themselves first. They've filtered. They've waited. They've chosen what actually matters. And that's what makes their words powerful. So, how do you practice this? Try a challenge for the next week. In every conversation, count how many questions you ask versus how many opinions you give. Aim to ask twice as much as you speak. And in moments where you're about to feel the silence dawn, let it be. Let the other person breathe. Let yourself breathe. Because when you hold space for others, you're not just becoming a better communicator. You're becoming someone people trust. Someone who doesn't need to dominate a room to be felt in it. That's the kind of presence the world remembers. And here's a truth you won't hear often: the better you get at listening, the less you'll feel the urge to speak. Because understanding replaces assumption. Stillness replaces stress. And clarity silences noise. But let's go deeper. The real reason we say things we regret isn't lack of knowledge. It's lack of emotional control. You know what I mean? Those moments where anger rushes in and steals your calm. You say things you don't mean. You push people away. Then later, you wonder why I just stay quiet. Let me pause you there. That's not weakness. That's a brain in fight minus or minus flight. And Stoicism paired with modern neuroscience has an answer. When emotions spike, your amygdala hijacks your reasoning. You're no longer thinking. you're reacting. So the key is not to suppress emotions, but to process them before they speak for you. Marcus Aurelius didn't say it on feel. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Let that sink in. So here's a tool before you speak. Breathe. 3 seconds. That's it. Inhale. Exhale. Ask yourself, am I speaking from emotion or from clarity? And if you still feel the storm inside, do what Abraham Lincoln used to do, write an unsent letter. Pour out the anger, the fear, the hurt, then fold it. Put it away. You'll be amazed how much you don't need to say once you've said it to yourself. This isn't silence as avoidance. This is silence as power. Because once you reclaim your space between feeling and reacting, you're not just controlling your words. You're mastering your life. And remember this, the most powerful sentence you'll ever say might be the one you chose not to. Let me ask you something. Have you ever spoken a truth and still lost? Maybe you were honest. Maybe you were right. But the timing, the tone, the delivery, it all landed wrong. That's the paradox of speech. Being correct doesn't always make you effective. And sometimes, silence would have served you better. We've been told to speak your mind and keep it real, but blurting out every thought isn't courage, it's lack of control. Stoics understood this. They knew that power is not in what you say, but in how and when you say it. Let me tell you a story about Thomas. Sharp guy. Worked in finance. Smart, logical, quick to point out flaws. One day in a meeting, his boss presented a new plan. Thomas, irritated, jumped in. He dissected every weak point. He was strong. Just too fast, too blunt. His boss didn't argue, didn't push back. But a few weeks later, Thomas was quietly removed from a key project. Why? Because he was the team player. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. From that day, Thomas changed. He started writing down his thoughts before speaking, reading them back 10 minutes later, asking, am I saying this to contribute or just to prove him smart? If the answer was ego, he stayed quiet. And something interesting happened. When he did speak, people listened. Because his words weren't just noise. They were chosen. Think about that. What if your silence became a signal not of fear, but of depth? You don't have to say everything you think. In fact, the more self-minded aware you become, the less you need to speak. Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's hard, isn't it? To let someone misunderstand you. To not correct the record. But that's where real confidence begins. When you no longer speak to protect your image, but to protect your integrity. Try this mental shift. Imagine every word costs money. You'd speak less. A minute more. Give yourself a 3-second buffer. Thought comes in. You pause. Then ask, is this necessary? Is this the right moment? Is this the right person? That one habit could save you years of repairing what careless words destroy. And here's another shift. Stop announcing your plans. I know, that sounds harsh. But there's a subtle trap most people fall into. You say, I'm going to start a business, and people cheer. You feel accomplished before you've done anything. That's not progress. That's illusion. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't post about simplicity. He just lived simply. No bragging. No announcing. Just discipline. Because every time you share a plan, you open a door for distraction, for judgment, for pressure. It's like planting a seed and digging it up every day to check if it's growing. Let it grow in silence. Here's a story. Jake, 34, software developer, tired of corporate life, talked endlessly about building his own app. Great ideas, polished presentations, posted about it, talked about it, planned for it. Months passed. No code written. Nothing launched. Then one day, A friend said, Jake, you're addicted to talking about success, not building it. That hit hard. Jake stopped sharing, went silent. 3 months later, his app went live. No announcement, just action. It worked. Not because he got smarter, but because he got quiet. So try this for 30 days. Keep your goals to yourself. No posts. No hints. No humble brags. Instead of telling the world, tell your calendar. Show up. Do the work. Not because recognition is bad, but because results speak louder than intentions. And now, let's talk about something even more sensitive: choosing who you speak to. You see, the danger isn't always in what you say. It's in who hears it. Stoicism isn't about being cold or closed off, but it is about being selective. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. You ever vent to someone, only to have your words show up in a rumor? Or share a dream with a friend, and they copy it, compete with it? It happens because words are data. And in the wrong hands, data becomes leverage. You wouldn't give a stranger access to your bank account. So why hand them your secrets, your doubts, your dreams? Here's a rule: the 3 - time principle. Before confiding in someone, ask, have they shown up 3 times? In joy, in pain, and in silence? Not just when they had something to gain, but when you had nothing to offer. Because anyone can clap when you win. Few can sit with you when you're still becoming. Protect your inner life. Let your words flow like a river, but choose the direction. Choose the audience. And most importantly, choose yourself first. You're not being paranoid. You're being precise. Precision is power. And if you've ever lost something because you spoke too soon or to the wrong person, know this: that was the mistake. That was a lesson. A sharpening of your intuition. Use it. Because silence, when chosen with intention, becomes wisdom. Let's go deeper. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of power. In today's world, where everyone is performing on camera, in meetings, on social media, the rarest thing is restraint. To hold back. To not react. But Stoicism teaches this one rule again and again: he who controls himself controls everything. Think about the last time someone said something wrong about you. Maybe it was a false assumption, a slight jab, or a loud accusation. Your first instinct? Defend. Retaliate. Set the record straight. But what if you didn't? What if you just looked them in the eye? Stayed calm. Said nothing. Walked away. That silence isn't weakness. It's terrifying. To them. Because when you don't respond, they have nothing to push against. Nothing to escalate. Nothing to control. That's not silence. That's dominance through stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, don't become what you're fighting. You don't need to outmanage, argue a fool. You just need to not become one. And that's where real transformation begins, not by reacting, but by choosing not to. Let me tell you about David, a designer at a competitive agency. One of his co-workers pitched David's idea as his own in a big meeting. Everyone clapped for the wrong person. David stayed silent. No call minus out. No drama. Just watched. A week later, the team needed execution. They turned to David, the only one who understood the vision. The idea was his. The leadership knew it. The room knew it. And David? He never said a word. But he earned the moment. That's the kind of respect silence earns. Because when you speak only when it matters, every word lands harder. This isn't about being passive. This is about being selective. It's about mastering the timing, not surrendering the power. And sometimes, silence is also the medicine you need for your own emotional chaos. When you stop voicing every negative thought, they start to shrink. It's the same principle in Zen Buddhism. Wu Wei, or non-minus action, is not passivity. It's choosing a deeper form of processing, You're not avoiding the storm. You're letting it pass through you without flinching. Try this one full day of intentional silence. No complaints. No vague subtweet tasks. No venting. Just observe. Keep a small notebook. Every time you wanted to speak, but didn't write down the moment. Then at the end of the day, ask, if I had said something, would it have changed anything for the better? You'll be surprised how often the answer is no. And even when the answer is yes, your silence gave you something just as valuable: clarity. Now let's flip the script. There's one more place where silence matters more than we realize our achievements. We're conditioned to announce everything. New job? Posted. New goal? Shared. New idea? Broadcasted before it even exists. But here's the paradox: the more we talk about doing something, the less likely we are to actually do it. Why? Because talking gives us a shortcut to gratification. When you say, I'm going to start running every morning, and people respond with, that's awesome, your brain gets the dopamine hit before you've done anything. It feels like progress, but it's an illusion. Stoics knew this. They didn't talk about discipline. They lived it. Real power doesn't come from words. It comes from consistency. So the next time you feel the urge to share a goal, stop. Write it down instead. Put it somewhere only you can see. Let it grow in silence, like a seed under the soil. Protected, untouched, unjudged. Because when your results speak for you, you don't have to say a word. Think about the most respected people in your life. Are they the ones who talk the most? Or the ones whose actions carry weight? Be that person. Let your focus be your proof. Let your routine be your resume. Let your silence be your commitment. And when the time comes, and your work is finally visible, people won't say, they talked about this for years. They'll say, they did it. No hype. No spotlight. Just results. That's the kind of respect no algorithm can buy. Because the one who controls their words controls their world. Let me tell you something most people never admit. You don't tell the world your thoughts. You don't tell every emotion a voice. And you definitely don't tell every person access to your inner life. The more you grow, the more you realize privacy is not secrecy. It's security. And part of that security comes from choosing your confidence wisely. Because not everyone who smiles at you deserves your trust. Some people listen only to gather. Some ask questions not out of care, but out of curiosity or control. Stoicism isn't about shutting yourself off. It's about becoming selective with your soul. And that means this: just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to answer. You don't have to explain your next move. You don't have to share your relationship struggles. You don't have to update your life story just because someone's listening. Think of your personal truth like a treasure. Would you hand it to someone without knowing whether they'll hold it or drop it? Of course not. So why do we casually throw our vulnerabilities into the hands of strangers, acquaintances, or even friends we've never tested? Let me tell you a story. Mark was a personal trainer, just starting out. He had big dreams and a few big insecurities, mainly around finances and getting his first few clients. One day, he shared his worries and ideas with a fellow trainer at the gym, someone who seemed supportive. Weeks later, that same person opened their own gym next door, targeted the same clients, used nearly the same branding. Mark had handed over his blueprint and watched it get used against him. He didn't lose because he failed. He lost because he overshared too early. And this happens more than we realize. It happens at work. You vent to the wrong coworker. Suddenly your boss starts treating you differently. It happens in families. You open up in vulnerability and someone throws it back at you during an argument. It happens online. You pour your heart out in a comment or a post, hoping someone will understand. Instead, it becomes screenshot fodder, a punchline, a thread. Here's the truth: not every feeling needs to be voiced to be processed. Sometimes, silence is more healing than expression. Try this filter before sharing something personal. Will this make me stronger or give someone else power over me? If you're unsure, stay quiet. Because every word you speak gets stored somewhere in someone's memory, in someone's narrative, in someone's private judgment of you. There's a reason intelligence agencies protect information with strict clearance levels. Your life deserves the same protection. This doesn't mean you become paranoid. It means you become precise. You'll know the right people not because they flatter you, but because they prove themselves in your life repeatedly. Through joy, through hardship, and through the quiet in between. That's the test. Everyone is kind when things are going well. Do stay loyal when there's nothing left to gain. So guard your words like a gate. And don't open that gate just because someone knocked. Now, let's circle back to the power of achievement and letting them speak for you. We live in a time where people perform their progress. We post our goals before we start. We announce our routines before we've built consistency. We share half-formed ideas just to get applause. But what if I told you the applause is actually part of the problem? Because that round of validation, that dopamine hit, it tricks your brain into thinking you've already accomplished something. And so, you lose the drive to do the real thing. Studies in behavioral psychology back this up. Talking about your goals too much can reduce your chances of reaching them. Why? Because your brain confuses talking with doing. It gets the reward before paying the price. That's why the Stoics were silent doers. Marcus Aurelius didn't announce his meditations to the world. He wrote them to himself, in private, in silence. And they outlived him. You don't have to tell the world who you are. Just be it. There's a quiet strength in the person who shows up consistently, says little, and lets the outcome speak. Here's your challenge for the next 30 days. Every time you're tempted to talk about what you're working on, pause. Don't suppress the energy. Redirect it. Write one sentence of your plan. Then take one small action. Repeat that cycle. No noise. Just results. Let your calendar be the place your ambition shows up. Let your silence build gravity. Because when people finally see what you've done after months of not knowing, they'll listen. Not because you asked them to, but because you made it impossible to ignore. That's the power of Stoic restraint. It's not just a communication tool. It's a way of life. One rooted in clarity, in depth, in trust, turn not given. And when your words return when you do speak, they'll carry more weight. Because people will remember that when you work wide, you were building something. So keep building. And let your silence grow strong roots beneath everything the world will eventually see. Let's reflect for a moment. If silence is so powerful, then why is it so uncomfortable? Because deep down, we fear being misunderstood. We think, if I don't speak up, they'll get the wrong idea. If I don't explain, they'll think I'm weak. If I stay quiet, they'll write their own story about me. And they will. But that's the point. The Stoics knew that silence creates mystery, and with mystery comes control. Because the less people know about your thoughts, your emotions, your next move, the more they're left guessing. That's power. Controlled ambiguity. A kind of invisible gravity that keeps people attentive, curious, respectful. It flips the dynamic. You no longer chase to be understood. They reach to understand you. But this isn't about manipulation. It's about self-minus possession. It's about stepping out of the performance loop and choosing to be grounded in your own narrative, not someone else's version of it. Let me take you back to a moment in history. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, once faced betrayal within his own circle. Close allies turning on him. Yet, he didn't launch into public defenses or accusations. Instead, he wrote privately. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, he said, unless with a view to some mutual benefit. Translation? Let them talk. You have work to do. And that's your compass. If it doesn't serve your purpose, it doesn't deserve your voice. We've all been in rooms where we felt the urge to prove ourselves, to speak up just to remind people we exist. But the truth is, the people who speak the least often make the strongest impression. Their presence does the talking. Their character speaks louder than their commentary. So here's a question for you. Are you speaking to connect or to be seen? Because when your need to be seen fades, your need to overmind us explain fades too. You stop chasing validation. You start radiating conviction. Try this experiment in your next group setting, whether at work, a gathering, or even online practice, saying 50% less than you normally would. Observe what changes. You'll notice two things. First, others will start to fill the silence with their own assumptions. Let them. That's not your burden. Second, when you do speak, your voice will carry more weight because people have learned to lean in when you talk. That's what happens when silence becomes your baseline. Now, let's take this one level deeper. There's another benefit to speaking less that no one talks about: freedom. Every time you speak, you commit to something. An opinion, a plan, an identity. And while commitment is powerful, it can also become a prison. Because the more you say out loud, the more you feel pressure to defend what you said, even if you've changed your mind. That's why the Stoics were slow to speak. They understood that silence protects your ability to adapt. It gives you room to pivot, to grow, to reverse course without shame. You don't owe consistency to your past self. You owe integrity to your present one. So instead of saying, "This is who I am," try asking yourself, "Is this who I want to be today?" And let your actions, not your declarations, answer that question. Let me share another moment with you. A woman I know, Maya, once told everyone she was going to write a book. Posted about it. Shared the concept. Even got early interest from a few publishers. Then life happened. Family issues. A career pivot. The book never got finished. But the public record of her ambition remained. And every time someone asked, "How's the book going?" she felt like a failure. Not because she failed, but because she had spoken too soon. So she changed. She went silent. 2 years later, no announcements, no updates, her book came out. Quiet release. Quiet success. And when people asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" she smiled and said, "Because this time I wanted to do more than I say." That's what silence gives you the space to do. Without pressure. Without noise. Without the performative burden of being watched. And the best part, when the result is real, it never needs an introduction. So here's the challenge for you. For the next week, catch yourself in the act of over-minus explaining. When you feel the urge to clarify, to justify, to convince, pause. Ask yourself, do I need to say this, or do I just want to be seen? If it's the second, choose stillness. Choose the strength to let your presence say what your words don't need to. Because silence, when intentional, is not emptiness. It's alignment. It's standing in your truth without needing to advertise it. It's walking into a room and knowing I don't need to speak to be heard. I don't need to explain to be valid. I just need to be fully, honestly, calmly. That's not just stoicism. That's emotional freedom. Let's pause here because something profound happens when you stop reacting to everything. You begin to observe. And in that observation, you uncover the most important battlefield of all, the space between stimulus and response. That's where your power lies. You see, most people don't speak from clarity. They speak from friction. A flare of anger. A sting of judgment. A need to feel in control. But the Stoics knew that wisdom isn't loud. It's calm. And calm is built in the quiet seconds before the impulse wins. Ever noticed how a person who speaks slowly, intentionally, with pauses draws more attention than someone who's rushing their word? It's because space communicates confidence. Stillness is often mistaken for weakness, but it's really just restraint with discipline. And restraint is what keeps you from turning a momentary emotion into a permanent mistake. Let me take you into a real minus world scene. Imagine you're in a meeting. Tension's high. A colleague throws a subtle jab at you in front of everyone. Your ego wants to react. Maybe with sarcasm. Maybe with facts. Maybe with fire. But instead you breathe. You look at them. You say nothing. You return to the topic. Steady. Neutral. Clear. What just happened? You refuse to give them what they wanted, your energy. You turn that game into a mirror. And in that reflection, they look smaller, not you. This is the art of emotional Aikido. You don't block the attack. You let it pass through you. You don't fight chaos. You absorb it without losing your form. That's the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate, emotional, often regrettable. Response is considered, grounded, free. And the key to that shift? Silence. But silence isn't just not speaking. It's choosing not to speak even when you really want to. That's why it's so powerful. Because the more you train your inner restraint, the less you fear being misunderstood. You stop needing to explain yourself. You let people think what they want and move forward anyway. And ironically, this is when your influence increases. Because the world is full of noise. But it listens to those who don't need to shout. So here's a practical method to use this power in your daily life. I call it the 3-second rule of inner mastery. Before you speak, pause for 3 seconds. Just 3. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this coming from clarity or ego? Will this make things better or just louder? If all 3 answers don't come easily, say nothing. Let the silence be the answer. Let your dignity become your response. Over time, you'll find that people start listening differently when you speak because you've trained them to expect intention, not reaction. Now, let's go even deeper. There's another layer of silence that's rarely explored. It's the silence between you and yourself. We're ought to think through everything, to analyze, to journal, to explain even our own thoughts to ourselves. But there's a deeper kind of clarity that comes not from thinking but from stilling the thought altogether. This is where Stoicism intersects with meditation, with mindfulness, with the ancient idea of inner stillness. Because sometimes the answer isn't more thought, it's less noise. When your mind is racing, when your heart is pounding, when your nerves are lit up, don't speak your way out of it. Breathe your way through it. Sit with it. Let the wave crest. Don't chase it. Don't fight it. Just watch. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." And bravery doesn't always look like battle. Sometimes, it looks like being still when the world demands reaction. So here's a 24-hour practice. Speak only when it adds value. No venting. No complaining. No self-promotion. Just thoughtful, purposeful speech. You'll feel restless. You'll want to fill this space. But that tension, that's the transformation happening. You're rewiring your instincts. You're reclaiming your words. And slowly, your speech becomes a reflection of something deeper, something earned. Your silence becomes not emptiness, but signal. Not weakness, but weight. And people start to notice. You become the person who doesn't need to prove anything because your energy proves everything. Remember this. The most powerful presence in the room is not the one who talks the most. It's the one who chooses when to talk and when not to. So protect that power. Refine it. Live it. Let's revisit a truth that's easy to forget. The loudest person is rarely the wisest. Because wisdom doesn't rush. It waits. It listens. It speaks only when speaking adds clarity, not confusion. And that's what Stoicism sharpens in us, not just the ability to stay silent, but to use our words like a scalpel, not a hammer. Intentional. Precise. Unshakably calm. But there's one more element most people overlook: the role of silence in creativity. You see, silence isn't just a defense mechanism. It's a generative force. It's where ideas are born, where intuition whispers, where clarity emerges from chaos. Think about it, the best ideas you've ever had, did they come from noise? From a crowd? From constant input? Or did they arrive quietly in the shower, on a walk, while staring out a window? That's not a coincidence. That's the brain finally having enough space to hear itself. Because when you shut off the external noise, your inner voice becomes clearer. And with that clarity comes direction. The Stoics didn't just embrace silence to avoid error. They embraced it to connect with truth, to sit with a question before rushing into an answer, to feel their emotions fully without immediately expressing them, to let their thoughts settle so the wisest one could rise to the surface. That's how you develop discernment, taste skill far rarer than intelligence. And in a world that rewards fast talkers and hot takes, discernment becomes your quiet superpower. Here's a habit to build it. Each morning, before you check your phone, before you engage with the world in silence for 5 minutes, ask yourself what actually matters today. No journaling, no music. Just sit. Let the fog settle. Most people don't do this not because it's hard, but because it's confronting. Silence brings up things we've been avoiding. The disappointment we haven't processed. The anger we haven't healed. The fear we masked with businessins. But facing those things in silence is exactly how we free ourselves from them. And only then do our words become clean, unpolluted by unresolved emotion. Because every word you say carries energy. It either elevates or drains. It either connects or divides. That's why a Stoic docent aimed to speak often. They aimed to speak well, to say what's needed. Nothing more, nothing less. Now let's bring this into the world of relationships. How many arguments in your life started with you, never or you always words fired not from clarity, but from frustration? How many bridges have we burned because we reacted, not responded? You don't need more clever comebacks. You need stronger filters. Here's one. When emotions run high, don't explain. Don't accuse. Don't even ask. Just pause. Let the moment cool. Because timing is everything. A truth delivered in heat becomes an attack. The same truth, delivered in calm, becomes wisdom. And this applies beyond just conflict. It applies to how you express love, encouragement, belief. You don't need to constantly remind someone you care if your presence already proves it. Let your actions deliver what words can only attempt. And when you do speak, make it count. Look someone in the eye. Say exactly what you mean. Then stop. Don't over-minus explain. Don't soften the impact. Don't fill the silence with disclaimers. Just leave your words there strong, clear, honest. Because when your speech comes from alignment, not anxiety, it doesn't need backup. And that's where we arrive at the final lesson of this chapter. Your words are not just communication. They're reputation. They build or erode trust. They reflect your emotional state. They reveal your self-minus discipline or your lack of it. So speak not just to be understood, but to be remembered for how you chose your words, why you used them, and when you withheld them. And if you've made mistakes before, and we all have, that's okay. Regret is part of growth. The key is to not repeat it, to turn every careless word into a sharper filter for next time. Because every step you take toward mastering your speech is really a step toward mastering yourself. And what's more powerful than that? So here we are. After everything we've explored, listening more, speaking less, protecting your peace, guarding your plans, choosing your confidence, letting achievement speak, embracing silence. There's one final truth that ties it all together. You don't need to say much to live loudly. In fact, the most meaningful lives often unfold quietly. The Stoic doesn't walk into the room and denounce their wisdom. They don't interrupt to insert their point. They don't boast about their self-minus mastery. They simply embody it. And in that presence you feel it. That's your goal, not to be loud, but to be undeniable. Because words may impress, but consistency earns respect. So what now? What do you do with all of this? You begin small. You take one conversation today, and instead of filling it, you filter it. You resist the urge to interrupt. You let someone finish not just their sentence, but their silence. You listen not for your turn to speak, but for their truth to emerge. And when it's your turn to talk, you breathe. You pause. And you ask, is this useful? Is this kind? Is this mine to say? Because not every truth must be spoken. Not every thought needs to land out loud. Some things are better carried in quiet strength. Let me give you one final story. There was a man, nobody famous, no platform, no following. He worked as a janitor at a public library. Every day, he arrived early, stayed late, cleaned quietly, greeted everyone with warmth, but never sought attention. People knew his face, but not his story. Until one day, after he passed away, the town discovered he donated nearly all his life savings, modest but meaningful, to build a reading program for underprivileged children. No announcement, no name plaque, just quiet action. That's a Stoic legacy. Not built in speeches, built in stillness, service, self-minded control. That's the kind of life that echoes without needing to shout. So the next time you're tempted to fire back at someone, or post just to be heard, or share a plan you haven't started yet, pause. Remember what we've learned together. Your silence is not your weakness. It's your wisdom. And your words, when finally chosen, should feel like presence. Like truth without noise. Like clarity without clutter. Because you've earned them. And if you do this, if you truly begin living with this awareness, here's what will happen. You'll stop regretting what you said in anger. You'll stop wasting breath on proving your worth. You'll stop explaining your dreams to people who don't understand them. And you'll start walking through the world a little lighter, a little freer, a little wiser. People may not always understand your quiet, but they'll feel your power. And one day, someone will ask, why do you always seem so calm, so centered, so clear? And you'll smile. Not because you have the perfect answer, but because you no longer need to give one. If this message moved you, share it with someone who needs a little more silence, a little more strength, and a lot less noise in their life. And if you're on the path to mastering your mind, your emotions, and your words, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. Thank you for walking this path with me. Now go speak less and live louder.